Welcome to OurSport. I'm Larriola, I'm your host. My son John is doing the recording and the editing. Week 2 of the 150th season of college football is in the books. And the biggest story of this week is the LSU victory over the Texas Longhorns. This was maybe the most anticipated non-conference game of the whole year. Lived up to the hype. This was a fantastic game. The story of the game, and maybe one of the stories of the year, is how LSU has changed. They have become different from what they've normally been known for. Now, their quarterbacks in the past have been thought of as caretaker quarterbacks, the Danny Etling types, the Jordan Jefferson types, aside from 1 year where Zach Mettenberger was quarterback. And also with a system that seemed to hold them back, a very conservative system. They would run the ball on third down, punt, play great defense. They won a lot of games doing this because they had phenomenal talent. The conservative approach in that sense worked. So it was a marriage of average quarterbacks with a conservative system that LSU fans grumbled about. When they got to the big games against Alabama, they're losing these games 10-0 or 21-3 or something along those lines. The defense would hang around, would keep the team in the game, let them hang around, and the offense could never make enough plays or make maybe a fatal mistake at the wrong time to end the game for them. Now LSU's changed. LSU got an assistant from the New Orleans Saints named Joe Brady, a 29-year-old. He's come in and they're throwing the ball more and they're throwing the ball effectively. Last year, LSU got a quarterback named Joe Burrow from Ohio State. If you talk to the Ohio State fans, they all like Joe Burrow. They knew they were going to miss him. He wasn't regarded the same way that Tate Martell was. Tate Martell never lived up to his billing. Joe Burrow was not as highly regarded, but he had a reputation there, and he's been phenomenal for them. He played well last year. It wasn't that he was a poor quarterback by any means, and there was a reason to get excited. He seems like he's taken his game to another level this year. If you see him when he throws, if he has a clean pocket, he has a solid platform, his feet are under him, he has a snap delivery, he's very accurate. Yesterday, 31 of 39, 471 yards, 4 touchdowns, against a great defense, a lot of talent on this defense. And the play of the game, however, was a situation where there was about 2.5 minutes left in the game. LSU is nursing a 6-point lead, and they had a third and long, a 3rd and 17. In the old days, they would have handed this ball off, they would have played defense, and they would have tried to win. This was going to be difficult because Texas quarterback was having a great day. Sam Ehlinger is reminiscent of Tim Tebow, and if he had gotten the ball back, there was a good chance he was going to score. They had trouble stopping him. But they didn't run the ball and play defense here. They put the ball in Ehlinger's hands, in Burrow's hands, LSU did, and they trusted him to win the game. And under extremely difficult circumstances, he did. If you look at this play in particular, Burrow does so many things right that a quarterback has to do to execute this play. He had to do all of them correctly, and he did. First of all, he's under a pass rush. He knows that he cannot run. Burrow has some scrambling ability. He's not enough of an athlete to get 17 yards against these Texas defenders. He's not that good. So he knows the ball has to be thrown. The ball has to be thrown more than 17 yards. You do not want to give them a chance by throwing it short. And he's rushed immediately. He steps up in the pocket. When he steps up in the pocket, he does not look at the pass rush. His eyes are constantly upfield. He has a defender bearing down on him from his right. He almost, if you look, he doesn't even see the defender, it seems like. He feels him, and he pulls the ball to his left out in the defender's way while keeping his eyes in the pocket, both hands on the ball. Then he delivers a strike, can't set his feet, not on a platform, off 1 foot, hits the receiver in stride, lets the receiver make a play. The receiver gets the ball, breaks away, LSU touchdown, effectively ends the game, breaks Matthew McConaughey's heart. This was a great play when you look at it. You could tell that Joe Burrow is a coach's son. You could tell that he had this drill to him about all the coaching points about how you're supposed to fundamentally execute difficult circumstances from the quarterback position. He did everything right he was supposed to. This is next level quarterbacking. This is NFL caliber quarterbacking technique. So now we have a situation where LSU, because of the way he's playing, all the arsenal of talent as the skill positions that they've always had around him, they look like they're going to have a chance to go on a serious run. Auburn and A&M, the main competition in that division for them, it doesn't look like they can beat this team. LSU looks like they can have a good chance to beat both of them, and we're already looking ahead to what's going to be a huge showdown with Alabama in November. And this could be different than those games before, those 10-0 games, 21-0 games, whatever they were. They have a chance to really make hay against that Alabama defense because they have a quarterback who can exploit these athletes on their side and maybe an assistant who can also do the same. As for the losing side, Texas, Sam Ehlinger played well. He kind of single-handedly kept them in the game. He found Devin Duvernay, a few other targets. He couldn't get the ball much to Colin Johnson. Colin Johnson is a huge receiver, 6'6", really did well against LSU's Christian Fulton, who's thought it was a potential first-round pick. But one other thing we should get to about LSU, they have a freshman corner, Darryl Stingley. Maybe the top corner in the country, I thought of that way coming in. He played well against Colin Johnson. And Johnson's 6'6". When you see Stingley next to him, Stingley is smaller, but Stingley is not dwarfed by Johnson. This is a big kid, a big athletic kid who went toe-to-toe with a NFL caliber receiver as a true freshman and acquitted himself well. So Texas is going to have a good year. They look like they're going to run through most of their competition except maybe Oklahoma. But they also look like they're a year away. They were not ready for this game, and LSU was. On one side note, we perhaps need to look at LSU coach Ed Orgeron differently and give him the credit that he deserves. He has an Alabama problem. He can't beat Alabama. Well, that's every coach in the country, not named Dabo Swinney. Every coach has an Alabama problem. If you look at top 10 teams that he's played, he's 6-0 against top 10 teams that are not named Alabama. He finds a way to win these games against top competition. He's so much different than the coach that he was when he was head coach at Ole Miss. His recruiting is phenomenal. He's always been a good recruiter, but he seems to have found his groove. He made all his mistakes as a first-time head coach at a different program. He got killed a few years ago because they lost a home game to Troy. Well, that Troy team, if you look at them, coached by Neil Brown's a great coach. The year before, that Troy team almost beat Clemson, lost by 1 point to national championship Clemson. The year after they beat LSU, they went into Nebraska, and they beat Nebraska, who is down by their standards. Nebraska still has more talent than Troy. When you look back on it, that loss to Troy is not that much of an indictment. LSU goes 10-3 last year. If they played Texas A&M in a 7-overtime game last year. On that game, they intercepted a pass by A&M quarterback Kellen Mond that would have ended that game. But Kellen Mond's knee was down. It was a fluke play, and if his knee had simply been 1 inch off the ground, this is a team that would have been 11-2 last year. So we're in our top 10, the OurSport top 10. We have LSU as the number 3 team in the country. We believe in this team. We believe in our quarterback. And I'm starting to feel like I have a lot more belief in this coach to win big games. The other big game of the day, a game that people are also looking forward to for a while, was Texas A&M at Clemson. This was a comfortable win for Clemson. I thought all year that A&M was going to be a good team with a brutal schedule that was going to have trouble beating the elite teams, and that's kind of what this looked like. Now, the word was that last year when A&M was a large favorite to Clemson and played a surprisingly close game, that Jimbo Fisher buried the playbook and came out with a slew of new plays and caught Clemson off guard for a lot of the game. And I think Clemson looks like they might have been ready for it. Clemson's defense suffocated Texas A&M here. They gave them nothing to really do. And Clemson, I wouldn't say it was a blowout, but you wouldn't say that this was a close game either. Everybody watches it can kind of see that. I will say this. Trevor Lawrence is the most talented quarterback in college football. Maybe the most talented we've seen since Andrew Luck. And Trevor Lawrence is playing well. He's playing very well. You see some of the throws he makes across the field from the far hash, the accuracy, the power, the quick delivery. He has so many next level tools. He's playing at a level that he did not play at the end of the year. Last year when he came in, it took him a while to become acclimated to the speed of college defenses. Once he got his feet under him, he got better and better. He was playing like perhaps a Heisman level quarterback, a Heisman winner level quarterback. And he's playing well. There's no doubt he's playing well. He's a notch below. If you look at how Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow are playing right now, they're playing better than him. But I don't want to say that he's playing poorly. He's having a good year. So what happens when he picks it up? What happens when he gets to the level that he was last year, where he could easily do it because he has maybe the best receiving core in the country? T. Higgins is the receiver that's not talked about because of Justin Ross. He's the same player as Justin Ross. He's a 6'4" receiver. It's going to go in the first round of the draft. They have Amari Rodgers back from injury now, from an ACL he tore in the spring. They have freshman receivers coming in, a couple of them also 6'4". Just an arsenal of big play threats. And Dabo Swinney, the one thing he does best, and he does a lot of things well, that's saying a lot to say the one thing Dabo does best, is maybe coach receivers. You look at throughout the whole time he's been there, Sammy Watkins, Nuke Hopkins, all of these receivers, Martavis Bryant on the team, Hunter Renfrow, they become wide receiver U, and they might have more talent at that position now than ever. The rebuilt defense that misses 3 first-round picks on a defensive line look pretty good. Pretty good. Xavier Thomas is going to be the next one that probably goes in the first round. So Clemson's going to go through a lot of their schedule. They're going to probably have game day at Syracuse next week. That was a talk. Syracuse laid an egg against Maryland and got blown out on the road. They look like they're not competition for Clemson. South Carolina, the last couple of years, for some reason, has talked about being competition for Clemson. That's how they've talked about themselves. If you watch those games have not been close. And I don't know who can stop Clemson from being 12-0 unless there's some sort of massive upset. And I expect them to easily roll through this conference and make the playoff. Now, let's talk about Michigan. In one of our earlier episodes, we called Michigan the most overrated team in the country. We listed our reasons, and all of this came to form against Army. Our main reason we said was this was a soft offensive line. This offensive line is not up to the standards of other Michigan teams. They could not get push. And Michigan fans were happy about the Week 1 win against Middle Tennessee. They thought most of the issues were probably correctable, and I believe they're right. But if you paid attention, they could not get push on Middle Tennessee. The Michigan Wolverines could not push the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders off the ball at the goal line. All day yesterday, the same thing happened against an undersized Army front. Now, Army is different than they were a few years ago. Coach Todd Monken is doing a great job there, and he's altered the standards somewhat at the service academy where they can't get some bigger players. And he's recruiting at a different level than they have before. This is a better Army team. Army is still athletically inferior to Michigan, and everybody knows it. And the fans were complaining because a lot of the runs were predictable. A lot of the runs were Michigan freshman back, Zach Charbonnet, up the middle. And the problem is not predictability. You can run that all you want against Army because it's Army. The problem is that they could not get push. They could not push the Army front. They had some trouble picking up blitzes. That's part of learning a new scheme. But not only that, the one-on-one matchups, Michigan was losing one-on-one matchups to the Army Black Knights. Michigan has teams they're playing on a schedule later on that are more gifted athletically than the Army Black Knights. The Michigan State defense I think, is the best defense in the country. I think they're very underrated, and it doesn't matter what they're like. They're going to give Michigan a war. Of course, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State. This Michigan team has losses coming if they play like this. The other issues Michigan has, a lot of them are correctable. A lot of them are mistakes made by players in terms of execution. Shea Patterson, who we said is a good quarterback, not a great quarterback. Well, technically we're wrong because he's not even a good quarterback right now. He's holding on to the ball too long. He's not sensing the rush. He's fumbling the ball. He's missing open receivers, wide open receivers. And this game got natural comparisons to the Army-Oklahoma game from last year, where Army took Oklahoma to overtime. This was not the same as that, because Oklahoma last year had a few limited amount of drives and executed perfectly on all their drives. So did Army. In this contest, both teams had more drives than the Army-Oklahoma contest last year. Michigan had plenty of chances. Michigan just kept making mistakes. Michigan kept shooting themselves in the foot. They easily could have pulled away from this Army team. If you look, this Army team is weaker than last year's Army team. They lost a great center, great play from the fullback, Andy Davidson, the halfback. These are players they missed. The quarterback is erratic. And Michigan's defense played phenomenally. They have this habit under Don Brown where on the first drive of the game, he'll get a touchdown. And then he adjusts. And that's what happened. Army got a touchdown on the first drive. The rest of regulation, 7 points. Army ran 61 run plays, diving at Michigan's knees in the cut blocks. That's part of their scheme. And throughout this, the Michigan defense played fast, were well-conditioned, they tackled well, aggressive. Michigan's defense bailed out their offense, bailed out Coach Jim Harbaugh. And you have to wonder why Michigan is running this scheme. We talked about this before. Because when you think about a scheme like this, when you think about the coaches that you want running this scheme, do you think Jim Harbaugh? Is that the coach you look at and you say, when I run this, this is the opposite of what he has run traditionally? This is the coach I want to manage this, to fix the mistakes in this scheme? I would say no, because he has no experience running it and it's not his wheelhouse. So what does Jim Harbaugh do? He's an offensive coach. The offense is playing terribly. The defense is playing great. He's not a defensive coach. They're not playing great because of him. What is Jim Harbaugh's role at Michigan? What is he doing to make Michigan a national title contender? And they have some problems. They have a bye week. They have a game against Wisconsin coming up. Wisconsin shut out 2 opponents in a row, but those are body bag type of games. They were supposed to kill those teams, and they did. But their season gets more difficult immediately with their very next game. They have a long way to go on the offensive side of the ball. They can fix the execution issues. I don't know if they can fix the push issues on the offensive line. They can fix being soft. We'll see as their next games play out. Meanwhile, on the West Coast, for the second year in a row, Cal upsets Washington, a top 15 Washington team, in a game that basically nobody saw because it was on the West Coast and it was in a weather delay. This game ended at 4:30 in the morning Eastern time. Last year, Cal was a top 15 team. Washington was a top 15 team. Cal was an underdog trying to just get bowl eligibility. Beat them 12-10. The difference in that game, if you watched, Cal's got a great defense, but it's got a middle linebacker named Evan Weaver. And he had a great game, 11 tackles, had an interception for a touchdown in a 12-10 game. So obviously he's a difference. If you watch this game, Weaver was even better. Evan Weaver's an animal. Evan Weaver's all over the place. He had 18 tackles in this game, had a couple tackle for loss, had a big forced fumble after a hit on the quarterback. And when we have our All-American team at the end of the year, I can almost guarantee you Evan Weaver is going to be on it. He's a fantastic player, might be Defensive Player of the Year in the Pac-12. Huge win for Cal. Terrible loss for Washington. Terrible loss for the Pac-12 conference, because USC always has a chance to win no matter what they look like, because they have so many inherent and valid advantages that lead to talent acquisition. Now their quarterback's out for the year. They're playing a true freshman. I don't care what the record is, they're not going to be a playoff contender. Washington had a pretty good chance because they're always going to be a strong team under Chris Peterson. Once he got his program established, they're going to be out. If you have one loss as a Pac-12 team, you're pretty much dismissed. It's not like being in the SEC. That leaves Utah. Utah's pedigree and the amount of talent and depth they can acquire, they're not going to be a team that goes undefeated in this conference, not with a 9-game schedule. They're a good team, especially on the lines of scrimmage. But this was a devastating loss for the Pac-12 and almost certainly put them out of the playoff race in week 2. Pac-12 also has some issues because they have competition in their own geographic region from the Mountain West Conference. The Mountain West Conference might be the best G5 conference right now. You look at what they've already done this year: Wyoming beating an SEC team in Missouri, Boise going on the road, upsetting Florida State. Hawaii's already got 2 Pac-12 pelts. Took out Arizona week 1, Oregon State week 2, which we predicted. And then you look at San Diego State, multi-time conference champion, great coach under Rocky Long. Played probably the worst game of week 1. A 6-0 win over Weber State, which nobody watched, and who can blame them? But clearly, Rocky Long, hiding the playbook, burying the playbook, came out, beat UCLA. Last year, beat Arizona State. Year before that, beat Arizona State and Stanford. Year before that, beat Cal. Taking out Pac-12 teams left and right. 5 wins in 4 years. And that's an intriguing conference. If you look at some of the G5s, the MAC, for example, there's a lot of homogeny. They're more regionalized, even clustered together, even closer to the Mountain West, and all those programs almost kind of look the same in terms of the towns they're in and what their identities are. They might have separate identities, but they're hard to distinguish. Something about the Mountain West is just really cool. You've got Hawaii over there, which is just Hawaii. You don't have to say anything more. Wyoming playing at 7,400 feet. San Diego State with maybe the best uniforms in all college football, and for the longest time, running the dinosaur offense. The quarterback under center and the I formation, the power run game. And each team seem to have their own separate identity, and I really like that conference. It's probably my favorite one out of all the G5s. Tennessee, meanwhile, lost again to BYU. This loss looks terrible for Tennessee, but I watched this game, and Tennessee looked much different than their week 1 loss to Georgia State. Week 1, Tennessee looked listless. When the second quarter, by that point, they already start to give up. They had a lot of energy in this game. They played with a lot more enthusiasm. The crowd was behind them. You could tell they were trying to get the crowd to support them, and the crowd obliged. They were really willing to help, and they had one blown assignment at the end. They were pretty much going to win this game. And then Zach Wilson, the BYU quarterback, the Mormon Manziel, he hits a long pass when one of the Tennessee corners just blows his coverage, and this game goes to overtime and Tennessee loses. But I don't think Tennessee now, people think they think the Volunteers are a 2-10 team or something along these lines. I'm not sure they are. They looked a lot better than this. They definitely need better quarterback play, but they have some talent, that a receiver especially, places here and there where they have to be assignment sound. That's their biggest issue. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if they took out some of the SEC teams who are not supposed to. Nobody along the caliber of Georgia or Alabama. But it wouldn't surprise me if they beat Florida 2 weeks. Wouldn't surprise me at all. So Georgia State, meanwhile, celebrated their huge win. We said in one of our previous episodes that now they have to be careful, because even though they beat Tennessee, they could lose to Furman the next week. They're going to get more media attention than they've ever gotten before. Sure enough, Furman has a 17-point lead on Georgia State. Georgia State comes back and wins the game in front of 20,000 of their fans. We've been to Georgia State games before. There's never been 20,000 fans at a Georgia State game. This might have been a complete game changer for Georgia State. A few years ago, they acquired the Brave Stadium. The stadium is right in the center of Atlanta. It's right in the heart of a major recruiting area, and it's just minutes away from one of the biggest airports in America. You have that stadium with this publicity. This could elevate Georgia State to a level above what they've been before. Last thing I want to talk about is all the turnover gimmicks. So I don't know what's going on with this. I mean, I guess I understand the motivation of it, but it's gotten pretty silly at this point. First and foremost, let's give credit to Miami, the Hurricanes. They invented something that was really cool. The turnover chain was really cool. And I don't think there's any doubt about that. And now you have all kinds of, stupidity with this. Somebody's got to turn over a pencil. Somebody's got to turn over a grease board. Tennessee had to turn over a trash can. Maybe you don't want to associate your struggling program with a trash can. Just a thought. But it all starts from Miami, and Miami should get all the credit for it. That's our opinion at OurSport. So, I'm your host, Larry Ola, John Ola, again, doing the recording and the editing. You can find us on Facebook, OurSport College Football. Join our group page. You can contact us at oursport@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter, OurSport3. We're always working to try to improve the program. You can tell if you watch, the program is our channel's in the infancy of our production. We want to get better. You have any suggestions, please let us know. And if you want us to talk about your team, get a hold of us, write in the comment section. We're going to follow your team. I guarantee you, if you have a team, we're following it if it's in the FBS. And we'd be happy to discuss it. Thanks again, and we'll see you guys next week.